How's it going? Today I want to talk about my 2007 Ford Focus ZX3 hatchback. Got the four-cylinder, 2-liter manual in it, and it is, in my opinion, like a swan song of that 2000s and even going into the late 90s economy car. And I'll show you why. But basically, it's just the best bang for your buck with offering you as few things as possible that can go wrong. So what makes this thing so great is they're cheap, spacious, and relatively fun to drive for the low horsepower. I get about mid 30s in terms of gas mileage in city and highway combined, and it's like 35 bucks to fill up the tank when gas is $3.10. You just can't beat that nowadays. The back even, it is being a hatchback. It's got so much space to offer you. You just pop in the trunk. You can put down the seats, and I've moved countless times in this thing. All my stuff fits in it. Everything you could want to move as a single individual, you can move with this thing. And speaking of the back seats, I'm 6 foot. My brothers are taller than I am, and we all fit in the back seat spaciously. As someone who doesn't always haul more than one person around, having a two-seater is great because it fits everywhere. I lived in the city for a time, and being able to wedge this thing in between cars and tight parking spaces was invaluable to me. Getting in the back as someone who's 6 feet tall and to have leg room, I have a solid few inches of room above my head with my feet all in front of me. They're touching the seat, but I am comfortable back here. This car by no means is luxury though. The sound deadening is non-existent. I hear every rattle, every bump in the road is felt and heard inside this cabin, but it starts up every single time. And what I mean by there's no options and there's no sound deadening is it is the basic of the base cars. There are no power functions. There are no power locks. All of your locks are finger locks. So either you have to do by hand. The windows are crank, and our mirrors are manual as well. And to top it all off, there is no speedometer. You'll see that while we're driving. There's only a little arrow to indicate when you should shift. But yeah, everything works in this car. It's got rear defrost, AC. I mean, what more could you ask for in a car? Alright, so this is obviously the Tudor 4-cylinder. There's not a whole lot going on, so it's really easy to work on. Parts are relatively inexpensive, and I've never had any major maintenance really rack up too high of a bill at the shop. It's just a really straightforward car. Not a lot of high dollar things that will regularly go wrong as long as it's been cared for. You see this generation of Focus either in the sedan or the hatchback as well. Just beat the hell. These motors are, I think, really robust and reliable. And for what you're getting, they're honestly a little pretty fun to drive. They're not fast at all, but especially with a manual, they're just fun to drive around. It's like a little Miata, but with a hatchback. I think. I mean, that's a hard bridge to jump across. I'm just trying to say that it's a little car that'll put a smile on your face, and it does every time I jump in it. Trying to rev match and heel toe, it's fun because when you mess up, you're not gonna go through a brick wall because you're going 100 miles an hour. You're going like 30. Let's go for a ride. So every time without fail, it'll start up. I had to put a new starter in though, because for time it didn't, but now it does. So that's the one thing about cheap cars is that sometimes they're not often very cheap, but it's never a big purchase for maintenance, I feel like. But you'll see here, if you want to get the dash in here, you'll see the light. There's no tachometer, but you'll see a little arrow if I go into first. See that little arrow on the screen? That's telling me that it wants me to go into my next gear. It's just a fun, peppy little car. And there's that noise deadening. I think it's what engages you more into the road and makes it a little more of like a lively experience, because you hear the road and you hear the bumps and you hear the engine as you guess what RPM it's hitting at that current time. It's just a fun little car to drive around. I keep saying that, but it's just true. It's just if you hit some curves and you drive around the city or around town, and it's practical too. I mean, you can move anything in this. I mean, not anything, obviously. You couldn't move like a 60-inch TV, but if you had like a chair or like a lot of bags of furniture or a big load of groceries, you just put the seats down, put them in the back, and you're good to go. And I drove to Chicago from where I am, which is about like a 3.5 hour drive depending on traffic. It's about like a little over 300 miles. I filled up once halfway because I don't want to fill up in downtown Chicago, and that was the one time I filled up gas the entire trip. I mean, obviously the highway traffic on this thing is terrible. It's light, and there's as you can see, there's no cruise control anywhere on the steering wheel because it doesn't have it. Your cruise control at that point is your foot and the gas pedal. Yeah, just a little 5-speed, and it's fun to drive around. I think in closing, this car does a lot of things and ticks a lot of boxes for not a whole lot of money. If you need to move space, if you need space to move things, if you want a car that's peppy around town, that's good on gas, that's a manual, that you can get a manual, that's going to be fairly reliable and fairly cheap to work on. This car, I mean, it does all those things, and it can be had for somewhat around $3,000, give or take. Obviously, it can be had for more or less, and there are other options. You can get a 4-door hatchback, you can get a wagon version of this. You can also get an SVT version of the 4-door or 2-door hatchback. The SVT gets a much better equipped interior, all power options, leather seats. The build quality is supposed to be higher than one of this, so not as much road noise. You also get McPherson struts and an engine with a head tuned by Cosworth, as well as a sport exhaust. So that one definitely, now that I've owned this, it has piqued my interest for a potential new daily driver, just because this thing is great. I mean, it's never too big, it's never too small for what I need to do. Competitors to this would be, if you're looking at wagons or hatchbacks, you're probably going to be looking at either the Toyota Matrix or Pontiac Vibe platform. They're the same platform, just different name. They have the 1UZ, 1.8 4-cylinder.
1ZZ.
Oh, sorry, 1ZZ, sorry. 4-cylinder. And those are great too. The Vibes is really unique. My brother owned a couple of them, and they had the back of the rear seats fold down, and they have like plastic cladding on it to create like more of like a truck bed in your hatchback. But those, how much can you get those for? How much do you get yours for?
A little more, like the low would be like 3 to 4. The average would be like 3 to 5.
3 to 5, yeah. So like those command a little bit more of a premium because of the Toyota reliability, price tag. And you can also get those in the GT or XRS trim for the Pontiac and Toyota respectively, and those get the 2ZZ motor, which is pretty fun. My brother had one of those, and it was geared fairly tall, if I remember correctly. So you really had to rev it out, but It was a blast to drive around town. But I think this thing is a sweet spot because we don't really ever get two-door hatchbacks here in the States. And especially one that's like this basic. I just think it's a swan song of basic economy cars because towards the end of 2000s and 2010s, you don't get, it's harder to find manual mirrors, manual transmission, manual windows, manual everything in a car like this. It's just cool to see in a car from '07 have like nothing option, but even though it does have a CD player, it's just fun to drive around. It just feels like you're driving around a piece of, I don't know, history. Not history. That sounds like way too dramatic. Piece of history, but I just love this little car. It's nothing special, but yet somehow it is, you know. So I love me a basic, super light 4-cylinder hatchback. I know we get them all the time in Europe, but having one of those with a manual here in the States is rare, and you don't know what you have till it's gone. So I'm just lucky that I've been able to enjoy this thing for as long as I have been able to.